Hi, I'm Mary Govenda, and I'm one of the decorators here in the decorating room at Wilton. Today I'm going to show you how to ice a real pillow cake. We're going to show you how to cover a pillow cake in fondant. First thing you've got to do is prep your first layer of the pillow cake. We're working with a medium layer, and we've iced it with the buttercream icing and smoothed it out. I've rolled out the fondant, and I've used a little over, probably about 1.5 boxes of fondant, which you can figure, it calls for 28 ounces to cover a cake, and I rather just have more, so I don't have to worry about centering it exactly over my cake. I've got more to work with than I need. And I'm going to lift, I've rolled out my fondant. I rolled it approximately about 1/8 inch, maybe 1/8 inch thick. And I'm going to pick it up using the Roman cut mat and then layer it over the cake and peel it off. You're going to straighten your corners as you need, shape it down the side of the cake. Give a nice smooth finish, and that's why you're using the fondant. Everybody likes the look of fondant, and a lot of people are acquiring the taste of fondant. Remember that when you're working your fondant and kneading it soft and pliable, to add a little flavoring, one that's going to complement your cake, one that you're using in your icing. You can use your fondant smoothers, smooth out the top, but this one kind of fell right in place where it doesn't need any smoothing. Your hands did the trick on this one. One little trick is if you should get an air bubble from the kneading, put your pin, take a straight pin, put it in sideways into the bubble. Let the air expel and then smooth right over it and seam it, iron it back together. You don't want to put a pin directly into the cake, because what happens in that hole, the icing will ooze out and come straight out that hole. Now I'm going to use a small paring knife and trace my cake. I can always trim it down. I didn't raise the cake up on this. I like it when the fondant falls on the table and it supports the cake rather than hanging down and stretching. Sometimes if you let it hang down too far above the cake, you get stress marks in your fondant and it starts ripping. So by resting on the cake, you avoid that. Resting on the table, you avoid that. Now I'm going to lift off the excess. Take away, that's still good, and we can use it and knead it out for the bottom, for the top half. And now I'm going to lift up my cake tier and trim off more. I'm going to use one of the boxes of fondant just because it's the right height for me. And it's got some weight in the box so it won't tip over. Smooth it down, shape it, and now come back, and if you've got a damp towel to wipe the blade on, a damp blade makes it easier and gives you a cleaner edge when you're cutting your fondant. Remember, this cake layer is on a board that's cut the same shape. We are going to remove it when we turn it over.
Too white, too black.
Just trim it to the size of the cake as needed. So you're cutting it below the board. Now, depending if you're going to tier this cake or if it's just being put on a foil covered board, you would put, if you're going to put it on a foil covered board, you would put it directly on the board right now. So you want to center your board over your cake. And turn it over. And clean your mess, because you don't want your icing getting on your board. Now you're going to remove that board before you put your top layer on of your cake. Press your fondant to the tier, and it's secure. If you like, you can put this in the refrigerator and keep it there until you're ready to work with the next tier. But you know what? We're ready to work with the next tier because we're going to ice the top and then place the other layer right on it. And we're going to use the cake icer again. Put the icing on the cake. If you were doing filling in your cake, make sure you put a dam of icing, a collar around the edge, before putting your filling in there. If you're putting just icing in between the layers, you don't have to worry so much about making a collar. A dam of icing is a lot of us refer to it. So we're just using an angle spatula, using the edge, holding it on a 45-degree angle, and bringing it across. Scrape off the edge each time you make a pass. And then just push it where you need it, making sure to seal your cake. And yes, I could use the large spatula, but being we have all these little edges, I want to make sure I get in there tight with the smaller spatula. It's a little easier for my hands. Maybe the large spatula will be great for yours. So we have our icing, or our filling for the inside of the cake, and now we're going to position our top tier, our top layer, on top. We've already trimmed it, crowned it, matched it up, and now we're going to position it on. And now before we work with fondant, of course, we've got to ice the cake. Cover your cake with the icing, and then now come along and smooth it out. Cover up any areas that might still be exposed, sealing it with the buttercream icing, and start smoothing it out. So you're blending the icing directly on the layer below, trying not to get it on any of the fondant, but don't worry, if you should do, you can wipe it off. It won't be a problem. Blend it to the side. Just push the icing down to the edge of the cake below and to the fondant edge. We're going to smooth off a little more. And then we can let it rest and smooth out the lines using the parchment again. As long as your icing crust, meaning it dries to the touch after a short amount of time, you can lay a piece of parchment on and bring a nice clean finish to your cake. Okay, we're going to put the fondant directly onto the cake. Now I'm going to try to space it evenly so we cover that whole tier, not the whole tier, the whole top layer of the cake. Place it over and peel it off the mat. Let it fall and shape the cake. Guide it along with your hands. And then you'll be able to, once you have it in place, the icing is going to hold it there. We can use the cake smoother, the fondant smoother on top. But you know what? This cake, the shape of the cake makes it so easy for the fondant just to fall in place that it doesn't take any work to smooth it out. It just kind of falls in place on its own. Once you have it shaped to the corners, use the palm of your hands and just smooth out the corners a little more if needed. Use the palms rather than the fingers. Your fingers are going to create ridges on that fondant if you use your fingers. And now I'm going to use a paring knife again, a small paring knife, and work eye level if you can. Get down to it, and you want to trim kind of where the fondant is. If it overlaps slightly, it's okay. Come along and trim off the excess fondant. I'm going to get some of that weight off of there. Turn the cake. It's a lot easier working directly in front of you rather than putting it on the side so you can see in the camera. You know, if you don't have a steady hand for cutting, which mine isn't, use a ruler and just score a line for you to follow along. Press the seams together. I know where my back of the cake is going to be already, right here. Your back is usually where something is not perfect and you want to cover it up. So don't panic if you don't cut a straight line. We've got ways to cover it up. You'll put a trim on it. You'll find that nice flower that will make everybody look at the flower instead of the crooked line. Pull away your excess. Remove the fondant. Trim off the corner to make it even. Press them together. And come back and check and see if you need to take a little more off here and there. But working eye level is very important. And yes, I'm not at eye level, but I'm bending down to try and see what I'm doing. And at home, why don't you raise your cake up so it makes it a lot easier for a straight edge. And now that your cake is covered in fondant, you can come in and put your braid on the edge or whatever you need to finish off your design. I hope that helps you and understand how to cover a cake in fondant.